Morning, everybody. Today is the last lesson on calculating sides using sine, cosine, and tangent. We started by writing the equations using sine, cosine, and tangent, getting those ratios down. Then we started using the tangent ratio to find some sides, and yesterday we added sine and cosine. Today what we're focusing on is the ability to look at a triangle and figure out what it is you're going to need to be using. Because you're not always going to know, and sometimes there are actually options. The important thing is the ability to write the equation correctly. If you can write the equation correctly, you'll be okay. So make sure that you've got the equations down, which is why that assessment exists, which you've all done. All right, so let's take a look at a triangle. Remember, we're only dealing with right triangles. So there's the triangle that I'll be dealing with today. Now it's right. Over here, I want to write SOHCAHTOA, because that is kind of our key to all of this. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over the adjacent. I'm going to deal with this angle today. And I'm going to say that it is a 24-degree angle. Let's give myself x, let's give myself y, and then let's say that this is 4. Okay? So the question is going to ask, find x and find y, rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay? And it doesn't matter which one you find first. You can find either one first. It's totally fine. But I'm going to find 4. Or, sorry, find x first, which will not be 4. Find x first. Now, you always need two sides when you write these equations. You're going to start with your angle, and from the angle, you'll need two sides. The two sides you want are going to be the side that you're looking for and a side that you already know the measurement of. Because you can't find two variables only using one equation. So I don't want to use sine, because sine of 24 will be x over y, and I can't solve for x when I've got a y in there. I could use, I don't want to use cosine, because cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and that would be 4 over y, and x isn't even involved then, so I won't find x successfully then. I'll want that when I'm looking for y. Tangent then is what I want, because that will give me the variable I'm looking for and a side that I know. So I want to use tangent in order to find x. So I write the equation. Tangent of my angle measurement, 24, equals my opposite over my adjacent, which will be x over 4, because this is my opposite side, this is my adjacent side. Then we need to solve for x. This is division over here, and I need to get x by itself, so I will multiply both sides by 4. So 4 tangent of 24 equals x. Now that I've got x by itself, we can zip on over to our calculators, which we're going to make sure are in degrees, otherwise we're going to get incorrect answers. And we need 4 tan of 24. 1.78. Rounded to the nearest hundredth is still 1.78. And before we say that that is definitely our answer, I want to take just a moment and talk about the reasonability of 1.78. If this is a 24-degree angle, that means that this is a 56-degree angle. No, sorry. 66-degree angle. Okay? The bigger the angle, the bigger the opposite side. So if a 66-degree angle is producing a 4, the much smaller 24-degree angle should give me a smaller answer. 1.78, therefore, seems reasonable. If I had gotten anything bigger than 4, it probably would be wrong. If I had gotten something about 4, it probably would be wrong. If I got a negative, well, that's just right out. All right, so now we want to look for y. Well, let's look at Maybe using sine, okay? Because we're looking for y, and if I use sine of 24, that will give me x, which I know now, and it'll give me y. So sine doesn't sound like such a terrible idea. But if you remember the decimal that we got here, it wasn't 1.78. It was 1.87 or 1.7809 blah 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 blah. We rounded this answer. And because we rounded this answer, if we use it to calculate y, we'll get the wrong answer. It'll be just a little bit off. It'll be very, very close, but it'll be just a little bit off. Plus, I'd rather plug 4 into my calculator than 1.78. I'm kind of lazy that way. So, I probably don't want to use sine. I could, and it would probably be close enough to the 100th that it would be fine, but I'm not going to. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse. That means that the adjacent is 4, the hypotenuse is y. That's something that I like because it's what I'm looking for and a side that I already know. So cosine of my angle measurement, so this is my ratio, equals my adjacent over my hypotenuse, which is y. Now, this one is a little bit trickier to solve. I don't just multiply. I have to multiply both sides by y so that these y's cancel out. But now I still don't have y by itself, so I need to divide both sides by cosine of 24 to get y by itself. And then y will equal 4 divided by cosine of 24. You will always either multiply cosine by 24 by the side length you know, or take the side length and divide by cosine of 24. Cosine of 24 should never be on the numerator. It should never be on the top, okay? But y is by itself, so now I can plug this into my calculator. All clear. 4 divided by cosine 24. Just double checking that I'm putting everything in right. 4.3, and that'll round to 4.38. Now, the last thing that I want to do is talk about reasonability. Does that seem like a reasonable answer for this problem? Well, it's opposite the right angle, so it should be the longest side, and it is. This angle, or this side right here, is going to be my second biggest side, and it's a little bit bigger than that, which it's a relatively small triangle with 4s and 1.78. So yeah, that seems like a reasonable answer to me, 4.38. My hypotenuse should be my biggest side. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you one problem now, where I'm going to ask you to find 2 different sides. You'll work through it on your own. Let's do that. We'll check our answers. Then we'll come back together. And then you'll be ready to go for the homework, and this is also the next assessment level. Let's do a 34-degree angle. So if this is 34, this should be my bigger side. Let's say x and y. I'm going to give you the hypotenuse this time. Let's say the hypotenuse is, let's make the triangle a little bit bigger this time around. Let's go with the hypotenuse of 8. So because we're dealing with the hypotenuse, just thinking out loud here, tangent doesn't have anything to do with the hypotenuse, so you probably won't use that. It'll probably be all sine and cosine for these. Okay, take a moment. Let's start with x first and then y. Go ahead and find x. Okay, let's walk through x just in case you got that wrong. Maybe that'll help you see what you did wrong, and then y will go a little bit better for you. All right, looking at this, I need x and a side that I know, so that'll be my hypotenuse. This is my adjacent side to this angle. This is my hypotenuse, so I'm looking for an a, I'm looking for an h, cosine. So I'm going to want cosine of my angle measurement equals my adjacent over my hypotenuse, which is 8. I need to get x by itself, multiply both sides by 8. 8 cosine of 34 equals x. X is all by its lonesome. I can clear, so that's 8 cosine 34. Yep, plug that in right. 6.63 for x. Around. Yeah. All right. Take just a moment then. Make this bigger for you again. Take just a moment and calculate y. Go. All right, looking at y. If we're looking at y, I need to include y and a number I know. Again, I don't want to use this because I rounded. So I want to use this side and my hypotenuse. So my opposite and my hypotenuse. OH means I'm looking for sine. Sine of 34 equals my opposite side over my hypotenuse. To solve, I multiply by 8 again. 8 sine of 34 equals y. Y is all by its lonesome, so I can plug this into my calculator. I'm going to do an all clear. 8 sine 34, 4.47. Then let's just have a real quick talk about reasonability of answers. My hypotenuse is my longest, which is good. This is 34, which means that this is going to be 56, which means this should be longer than this side. The 56-degree angle should be opposite the larger side, and it is. So the smallest side should be right here because it's opposite the smallest angle. Yeah, everything seems pretty reasonable here. So I'm going with them. And that's about as much as you can check your work here without completely redoing the problem. So just check to see if they're reasonable. They look pretty reasonable to me. As soon as you are done with the homework today, schedule an interview for this level. You cannot schedule an interview for this level unless you've already done the interview for just writing the equations, because you got to have that down first. So there's a very real chance that you are now 2 interviews behind. Get those done. This one now exists. Okay, so this will be, I'll give you like 2 different triangles, ask you to find missing side twice, and that's what that assessment will look like. That's the next one for you. Otherwise, go ahead, jump into the homework, and I'll see you tomorrow.